This week on Bruh Meets World.
We get Feeney and Amy saying what you and I have always said, which is that Eric is eccentric. He is creative. He thinks differently. I've been saying this for seasons. I've been saying that Eric is not as stupid as they make him out to be. His brain works differently and he has skills in different ways.
It seems that Feeney and Amy kind of understand that Eric is neurodivergent without having the language for that. Whereas Alan, he is expressing like sincere concern. He's like, he's the only one of my kids that I worry about. Really shows that Alan, not only is he just concerned for Eric, but he just truly doesn't believe that Eric has what it takes to make it in the real world either, which I don't know if that's a fair concern or not, considering everything we've seen of Eric.
When this boy meets world.
What up, bruhs?
What up, bruhs?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
Your Boy Meets World fan cast. I'm Ceej.
I'm Tony Curtis.
Timothy, how you been? What you doing? How's it going?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. We're recording this in late March. I don't know when this is going to come out, but it's starting to be spring again, which is nice. Like the weather is beautiful in LA, and I'm here for the sunlight. I'm here for the vitamin D. I really needed it. I missed it, and it's helping me just kind of wake up easier. I'm sleeping better because I'm getting more time outside. Like, it's great.
Oh, you're sleeping better and going outside? Okay, flex. I can tell because that haircut and that beard, they working for you. I'm very happy for you.
Got a spring cut.
Spring cut. Ooh, I didn't think about that. Spring cut. I'm here for it. You guys, we are so excited to be back and to talk to you about some Boy Meets World. It's been a while, and boy, do we have some stuff to talk about. I'm actually really excited for this episode. I want to see what you're saying.
Also, like, this episode was not a bad episode. Like, it was another one of those season 7 episodes that I kind of like, I looked at the premise and I was like, oh, I kind of remember this episode. And as I watched it, I was like, you know what? This isn't a terrible episode. It just needs some tweaks.
Some tweaks. Just a little tweak.
A little
tweaks.
A little
trim. I love it. Give it that, what do you call it? That 80s hairspray to pump it up.
Aquanet hi-fi.
Aquanet, yeah. Okay, before we do that, let's get into our little housekeeping, which is to say, you guys, you have been so vocal and reaching out to us. We really appreciate it. We have been trying to message all of you back, so continue to reach out to us at Bruh Meets World on all the places. Send us your emails at bruhmeetsworld@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on your phone, follow us on Instagram. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. You guys, we have merch. We have a Patreon where we do the Pod Meets World reacts. If you have thoughts on that, go over there and share them with us on our Patreon. Either way, we love hearing from you. We love having these conversations. And we are here for another episode. Okay.
Yep.
Yep. All right, Tony, in order to get into the episode, I think you know what we have to do.
Oh, what's that, Ceej?
It's the tell me about it.
Oh, of course. All right. Tell us about it. Eric joins the family biz, but Alan worries that Eric won't make it. Meanwhile, Cory's unwell and continues to fake it.
Ooh, you know what? I love when your writing skills come in and they do it how they're supposed to do it. I'm very proud, very proud. You guys, this is season 7, episode 14. I'm gonna be like you, Dad. Eric joins the family business, but Amy and Mr. Feeney don't think it's a good idea. In a B storyline, Cory overreacts to a low score on a health test that says he should be dead already. I like a few things. One, for those of you who may be like, hey, the Eric thing was more of the B storyline. I go with whichever one took up the most time. Yeah. I know we opened with Cory and his little magazine quiz, but to me, I was like, most of this, the title, everything about it is really about Eric and where he's at in life, and I really appreciated it. So I want to focus focus on that, and then we'll get to Cory later.
100%. Also, this title is actually taken from Cats in the Cradle.
I was gonna
Song.
say this is Cats in the Cradle, Harry Chapman's song. I was like, whoever, and it makes sense because a lot of Boy Meets World is about father-son relationships, especially at this time, especially this episode. Whoever is in the writer's room, they love this song. There are so many references to Cats in the Cradle. So yeah. And we'll have a good time then. Again, another
Sure.
episode title that is pulled from that song.
Word. Oh, you know what? Let me just give you my first impression of this episode, which is I remember this episode, like most season 7 episodes, I remember when they originally aired because they're the most recent, so I have that memory. I remember thinking that the Cory stuff was funny originally, and this viewing of it, I could kind of take it or leave it. I don't really think it was doing much for me. Very interested to talk about the Eric storyline, specifically the way Alan thinks of Eric, the way that Eric thinks of himself. I just thought there was a lot of good stuff there. Even honestly, if I'm being fair, the Cory and Topanga storyline isn't the worst Cory storyline we've had this season.
Not the worst we've had.
You know, I think that there's a lot of I don't know if there's a lot of meat on the bones, but there's definitely things we can talk about. So there's that.
Well, there's a few things I want to. One, we pick up a lot of threads, specifically with Eric in this episode, that I was like, oh, they remember who Eric is supposed to be. They are remembering Eric's past. They're remembering Eric's character. And I really appreciate them for that. And we even get, like, in the very first, at least the first scene with Eric, he walks in and he gets like that woo and applause from the audience. And I was like that alone should have told me how Eric-centric this episode was going to be, because we never give Will his accolades in show, and they did this episode. And it felt really much like he was the boy in Boy Meets World this week.
Absolutely. And honestly, again, I think it's deserving that we spend some time with Eric. Like, again, graduation's coming up. Like, these kids are leaving, even though I don't know if the show understands what a senior year in college is like, because
we're gonna get there.
A lot of the things they're debating about are things that should have been decided 2 years ago. But
so many thoughts.
But yeah, again, like, I love focusing on what the next step is. Like, this idea that something's coming next, Eric being unsure, even like when we were talking about like the Cory and Topanga centered episodes that we've been getting recently, how they've been focusing on like, okay, what's coming next? Like, I love looking ahead to them as young adults and kind of phasing away from the student aspect of it.
Yeah. This episode to me does have like a little bit of a challenge in terms of where everyone's supposed to be in their lives, and how we treat those people where they are supposed to be in their lives. Because it does something with Cory and Topanga that feels a little outside of college and a little older and mature and like a different show, which is weird because that's usually the feeling that we have with the Eric storyline. But the Eric storyline feels very traditional Boy Meets World, and very much we bring the family in. We see Feeney again. I say we see Feeney.
Yeah, we see Feeney.
Much more than that. We bring the shop back, which we haven't seen the camping store.
We haven't seen that set forever. Well, we find out why.
Well, I mean, yeah, I thought that was cute.
The show mentions
it. All right, so
yeah. Oh,
I was going to say, if we want to get into it, then it's because when we open up the scene, we have Alan come in and he's talking to Amy, and he's like, "Hey, people are buying camping gear again. That means that people are finally no longer afraid of the woods like they were when Blair Witch came out." And I was like, oh, A, that's a really good way to bring in some pop culture. B, 100%. That's a really good explanation as to why we're having this conversation now. And C, it's just a really fun way to kind of like bring the store itself back in and explain, you know, like why it's probably hasn't been talked about in quite some time.
I wonder too, like, they don't really get into it, but it seems like they've gone through like a financial lull at the
Yeah.
store where he was like, "Hey, Amy, guess what? We had a customer today." Like it was a
Yeah.
big deal to have a customer, and I'm like, are they doing well financially? Like, what? I wish we could know a little bit more about Amy and Alan and like their life outside of being like Eric's parents. Like they have Morgan, they have
Do
Joshua.
they?
They
Do they?
do
Because
they
we're
do
gonna
they?
get there. I was talking later on. I was like, this is called Boy Meets World because women do not matter. like later on when Alan's talking about all his kids, we see Joshua come in. We get moments with Cory and Will, and then no one even says the name Morgan. I don't think I get a "muh" sound out of Alan.
You know why? Because she's been dead for 40 years.
Keep going.
Oh, I was just gonna say that like I liked getting to see what Alan and Amy have been doing and what they've been up to. Like Amy just had this baby. Like I said, I think I've been saying this in the past few episodes that Amy having her baby was such a big deal last season, and then the baby came, and then we never circled back to what she's been doing or what the baby's been up to. This was our first time, I think, even seeing a baby since
Yeah.
birth.
Well, I
So
mean, I think we saw again. Oh, you're right. You're right. Seeing we referenced Joshua when the curtains are on fire or whatever.
yeah,
Back
but
in
we
the
never
Best
see
Friend
this kid.
episode. Yeah, we
So
don't see this kid. And to your point, um, just about like, oh, storylines that were dropped. Feeney's back in the kitchen. Not the dean. Apparently she got married and then just went on sabbatical somewhere. Uh,
never to be seen again.
never to be seen again. You know where she's at? She's with that one dude back in Africa.
Oh shit. Got them bees.
Them bees.
Them
But
bees will
anyway,
do it. Brings the honey to the yard.
brings the honey to your. You're stupid. But yeah, no. So I like that we pick up again all of these storylines where we have the dynamic that we aren't always used to. We were used to, but we haven't gotten a lot of in the last few seasons. And so to see Eric come in and Eric being like, "Hey, I'm gonna work at the store," and like the moment he walks in and we do get like the audience cheer, it feels a little Kramer-ish. It feels a little like, oh my God, we're gonna let him be stupid. But this episode totally did a 180 for me and treated Eric sincerely.
This is the first Eric that this is the first episode that I've seen in a long time where Eric wasn't off the rails. This is the first time where he felt like a normal person, where he felt like he could have been that same guy who had that weather internship. Like it feels like he isn't so cartoonish that I'm able to go on this journey with him, which I really appreciated.
And I will say, because of the seasons we've had, the season we've had with Eric so far, when Eric's like, I want to work at the shop again, I do feel like it's a little sitcom-y, but I do understand Alan being like, I can't have this dude in my shop. I just started getting customers again.
That's the thing that like I thought of, because they don't say, Eric doesn't say, I want to work at the store again. He's like, Dad, I'm joining the family business. And I'm like, Alan fired you. He fired you for a reason. And that's not something that's brought up when he's like, Amy, I don't really want to bring him on. It's not like, hey, last time he was here, he brought in a bear and like ruined my business. Like he did all these things that like got him fired.
But I think it should be noted, because we've talked about this. Sorry, let me do it again. We've talked about this. Eric is part owner of that store. So I felt like specifically when Alan says, my store, I don't want him working in my store. Amy goes, Alan, because this is not your store.
That's true. That's true.
Y'all's store. And he has the right to come and go as he pleases. Now, is he a headache? Is he like, I think, you know what it was to me that it really was? I was like, Eric is going to require you to work at the store. You're just mad because you will have to supervise, which is your job.
I'll say this, like after seeing him as an employee at the student union with the whole monkey fiasco, like I could understand a little hesitation in taking on Eric as an employee. He's great with customers, but there's a business savvy that I feel like hasn't been explored with him that I could see would make him a little bit of a liability as a hire. That's all.
He would only be a liability for as a hire if you allow him to handle the money, which you shouldn't be
Sure.
doing. As we saw in previously when he worked at the student union, and as we see in this episode, he's good with people. Alan is like, oh, actually, he forms connections with them. He
Yep.
gets people to buy things. Like they trust him. And I like that we are seeing the personable side and Eric is being rewarded for his people skills, because again, I think it's so important to reward and acknowledge soft skills. So often people want to talk about being good salesmen or being good in finance or all of these other jobs that are rewarded, but to be social is a skill. To make
Sure.
people comfortable and to trust you is a skill,
And
and
I will,
Eric has that.
to that point, I'll say this, like I'm 36 now and I've been working for a while. You would be surprised how many personality hires there are. You would be surprised how little it matters. If you can get along with people, if you can make the boss laugh, you would be surprised.
Side tangent. Have you heard this debate on TikTok where people are talking about the personality hire? And this guy came on and he said that, to be honest, being a personality hire will get you further than being actually good at your job. And I'm not gonna lie, I think he's right.
100%. If you could shake hands, if you can play golf, if you can do the thing where you're just chit chatting and make people laugh, make people look forward to you getting into work, they're the ones that are gonna be like, yo, grab him and bring him into this meeting.
I'm not gonna lie, I had this kind of journey myself when I was in therapy where I realized that like the time I was most successful at my job was actually when I was kind of the worst at my job. And what I mean by that is I was most successful when I was more of the personality hire.
Same.
But then I got on Adderall and I became very focused on getting the work done right. And in doing so, my personality shifted and I stopped focusing on those skills.
Mhm.
And I'm currently focusing on balancing both because like I feel like it's important to have both. But
Sure.
I will say I was more liked, made more money, and went a lot further when I was a personality hire.
100%.
And that's what Eric is, and that's what Eric should be rewarded for.
One thing I want to say is that Eric, the reason why he wants to join the business isn't just because, hey, dad, I need a job. It's this idea that, hey, graduation is coming up and I'm freaking out a little bit. I'm unsure about what the future is. I don't really know. And Amy is thinking of this as like, wow, what a great excuse for Eric to get some real world experience. And I'm just pointing that out because obviously that's going to come back later on. But this idea of like freaking out that you're graduating, not knowing what the next step is. I feel like it's a very relatable storyline. These are the types of storylines that, college kids that grew up watching the show can understand and relate to. And, some of I think the Cory and Topanga stuff that's been going on, as like fun as it is, or as romantic as, it may be for people who idealize their relationship, I don't feel it's very relatable to a bunch of kids and 19-year-olds. Like, I don't feel like them getting married is something that like high school kids or middle school kids watching the show can really relate to as much as like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen for me after I leave the school.
I love your slight little dig, as people who idealize their relationships may find.
Well, like if you love Cory and Topanga, then you're not going to care about, like, you're going to want the marriage storylines. You're going to want the honeymoon stuff. But again, I'm just thinking more about the relatability. And I think part of the reason why, we're listening to season 4 as the pod does it, part of the reason that season is so great is because there's so many relatable storylines.
Correct. And I agree with you when in the idea of like, let's just take the fact that Eric is starting to think, hey, I'm graduating soon. I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to work at my family's business.
Mhm.
And Alan, again, at first was hesitant, but once he hires Eric on, Eric is good at it. And
Mhm.
they say that Eric has an affinity for people. And I like that we get Feeney again, always championing it. And I think it's kind of interesting because we get Feeney and Amy saying what you and I have always said, which is that Eric is eccentric. He is creative. He thinks differently. I've been saying this for seasons. I've been saying that Eric is not as stupid as they make him out to be, his brain works differently and he has skills in different ways.
It seems that Feeney and Amy kind of understand that Erica's neurodivergent without having the language for that. Whereas Alan, he is expressing like sincere concern. He's like, he's the only one of my kids that I worry about. I, am worried about him going out into the real world, getting disappointed, like all of these things where it really shows that Alan, not only is he just concerned for Eric, but he just truly doesn't believe that Eric has what it takes to make it in the real world either, which I don't know if that's a fair concern or not, considering everything we've seen of Eric.
So here's the thing. I will say I was a little torn about this episode and how it treats Eric, because in some ways I understand that the show is making the argument that Alan is wrong. Alan, how dare you not trust your son? And again, Amy and Feeney kind of point out, wait a minute, you have no faith in your son. You don't think that he can make it on his own. He's made it this far. And yes, the kid is a little eccentric, but he has sincere love for people. He's caring. His mind works in a different way, but that has its own path for success.
Sure.
Whereas Cory over here is being a hypochondriac and freaking out over a magazine quiz. And the idea that he says, I don't have to worry about any of my other kids, I do think this episode would have been, we were talking about like that Aquanet that it needs. If I could have just like a little spritz of overlap in the storylines, if I could have Alan see Cory be successful in his marriage, but then as soon as Alan leaves the room, Cory shows his little neurotic behavior. If I could have Morgan come through and be like, hey, I'm a smart aleck kid, but I'm also a little streetwise. Like, I feel like that would go a long way. But just to see him say, I don't have to worry about any of my other kids, and then show Eric be good at what he's doing, but also not know how to spell future. These are things that I think are neat. What does he call it?
I love the ongoing joke where he's like, I found my niece, and then he calls his actual niece his niche. Yeah. I love that he constantly switches those words up. I don't know if this is the first episode he does it, but it's an ongoing joke that I love.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Feeney says Eric always did the best that he could. And I feel like, as you said, that really gives credit to someone giving it their all. Maybe not where you want them to be, maybe not to the same skill set that you would have, but Eric is trying. And believe it or not, the ability to try and to continue to try and to continue to put yourself out there, again, that will go way farther in life.
I've really also kind of struggled with the Alan perspective of it, because on one hand, like Alan and Amy and Feeney are kind of mentioned this thing of like, well, it doesn't really feel like you believe in him, and I think there is some truth to Alan needing to learn to have faith in Eric, but not every person needs to like jump into a career right away. Like, in a way, like if he were to work at that store for 5 years, 10 years or whatever, and then like transition to something else, like he's worked at the store for like what, a week, and they're already being like, you're taking away his chances at opportunities. And I was like, I just don't know that it's that serious, guys. Like,
I both love you and hate you because you always step on my point. Which is to say that the next thing that I was going to say is this idea of Eric, like the show constantly is just like, it's either school or a career. Like you can't do both. Like people notoriously haven't done both. Like a lot of people haven't talked about, even in previous generations, working their way through college. So there is something to be said that Eric going and working at his parents' store, he gets real life experience, which will go far on a resume in anything that he wants to do. And we know this because it's like, no, the worst thing is to graduate and have zero experience, have nothing under your belt. So the idea that Eric has a internship at a TV station as a weatherman, and working at his parents' store, which they don't have to know it's his parents' store, but just knowing that he had um, customer service experience, that will go far in whatever Eric wants to do. Unlike Jack and Rachel, who up until what we see, they have no experience. They have no real
I
work.
was gonna say it's funny enough, it seems like Eric has more job experience than any other kid on the show. So like it's interesting because he worked at the student union as well. So he has, some experience under his belt. It's I feel like there's this when they're throwing out these careers of things that he can do, they're always like these like idealized television kind of careers, like being a
Yeah.
veterinarian or some shit like that. Where I was
Yeah.
like, why is it that we have to push this idea that like every person needs to have like this career that's like all encompassing? Like if Eric can do a great job and he can like do it within the time frame in a place that's comfortable for him and he's successful in it, like clearly Alan's able to support a family at the store. So like why is it that big of a deal for Eric to just be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this for a while? I'm the type of person, and maybe this is just because we're millennials and we change careers like every 2 years or whatever, that I'm just like, the more experience like in different arenas you have, actually the more adaptable you are, versus this idea of jumping into like med school or something like that, where it may not be for everybody to invest 8 years of their life on one thing. Like I don't know, I feel like they're comparing him to other people in a way that I feel like maybe you shouldn't compare him to neurotypical people. Maybe that's not the best way to measure his intelligence or his capabilities.
Well, to your point, I think it feels generational. I feel like maybe there was this idea that you graduate college and you get some job and that's what you do forever.
Mhm.
Because again, while Eric is working at his family's store, which again we've talked about previously, the ability to have family wealth, the ability to have a job because your family owns a store
Mhm.
is fantastic. That will help you.
Mhm.
And so many people are dying for help, but there's this like idea in America that no, once your child graduates high school, to be honest, but at least graduates from school, even if that is higher education, then you cut them off and you push them out into the real world, and everything has to be something that you made on your own. And it's like, why? He
Yeah.
can work at his family shop. He can earn experience there and decide what he wants to do next, because it doesn't seem like any of them know what they want to do. And I got to tell you right now, if you're thinking about going to med school the last 2 weeks of your college education, you're in for a big surprise.
100%. Okay, so just quickly, I want to mention this. We cut to the scene where Eric is working with a customer at the store. He's has great customer service. Alan is hanging out with Jack and Rachel. By the way, in this scene, it seems as though Amy, Feeney, Alan, Jack, and Rachel are all sitting back just watching Eric work, being like, huh,
Thank you. I
he
love
can
that
do
you said that.
something right. And it
Because
was
they were like,
what?
oh, first of all, they're like, hey, we hear the door chime. There's a new customer. And they say something along the lines of, he needs help or help. And I was like, y'all ain't helping him work. Why everybody standing around?
Just watching him like he's like a kid who was in trouble or something. It's so weird.
I'm
But
just saying, in general, you talking about you don't have customers in the store. Maybe it's because you just stand around all day. You ain't got nothing to stock.
100%. Jack and Rachel say that Eric is so lucky because his future's mapped out. They're still so unsure about what they want to do. It's in this moment that it's finally revealed what Jack's major is, which is interesting. This motherfucker is double majoring in engineering and journalism. You've wasted college. What are you doing? Two
So
things that have nothing in common.
I'm not going to lie. Engineering and journalism, like engineering journalist or a tech journalist, that exists. There is a field out there, but again, I feel like it's more of like names out of a hat. It's like you guys didn't really think about these characters or what they would want to do or what their skill sets are. You just picked majors, and again, like you wanted them to have a double major, so you picked two quote unquote masculine majors that he could go into.
There's
And it's
nothing
like,
about Jack that screams journalism to me.
there's nothing about Jack that screams journalism, and there's nothing about Jack that has ever hinted at wanting to do journalism and even engineering. Jack is like relatively smart, but finance is clearly what that type of person. Jack is a finance bro if I've ever met one.
Finance, like advertisement, like something like that feels like it's more of his bag. Journalism for Angela to be known as a writer, for Shawn to be known as a writer, and for this dude to be studying journalism and for them to never talk about writing is like it's kind of weird.
They never talk to each other anyway. Like
Nope.
again, like it's weird that this episode has zero overlap. Like I would expect, especially if like Jack and Rachel are in the shop, why is everyone not in the shop? Why didn't we all come here to support Eric on his first day or whatever? It's very easy to do, at least from a story perspective, maybe not behind the scenes, maybe not from a production perspective, but there are so many ways that we could have overlap. A lot of Cory and Topanga storyline doesn't need to happen where it any set that it does, other than possibly production.
100%. So Jack tells his double major, which I kind of rolled my eyes at, and then I was like, "Oh, is this it? Are we finally gonna find out Rachel's major, like what she's been doing in college this whole time?" As soon as they get to her, she goes, "You know what I want to be when I grow up? Eric." I'm like, oh, so we're not going to get any information about you. You could have been the journalism major. Like, give us something.
Yes,
because
honestly, we know so little about Rachel. She could have been the journalism major, and I would have been like, oh, okay. Because you're right. When they started, I was like, oh, we're going to learn their majors. And then she goes, I want to be Eric. And then they just constantly show her bouncing. And to your point, I was waiting to talk about this because I was like, I understand the temptation to second guess your career choices. But med school, becoming a vet, all of these things that she's just like, maybe I'll go in, like Jack's like, maybe I'll be a lawyer like Rachel. And she's like, that was so many majors ago. And it's like, okay, y'all have 2 months.
y'all have 2 months, and you're like, these are conversations you guys should have been having so long ago that it almost makes whatever you studied in college completely irrelevant. Jack getting his double major in engineering and journalism and then being like, oh, maybe I want to be a lawyer. Maybe I want to be this. It's like, oh, so what? You're just wasting. Guys, I don't know if this is me looking at the price tag of college now, but I'm like, you cannot just be wasting semesters like this. This is money. The interest on student loans will swallow you for the rest of your life.
Well, we know that Jack most likely doesn't have student loans. And we know that Eric most likely doesn't have student loans. Rachel, girl, I don't know what you're doing. You came to stay with your boyfriend, so we know you on some scholarship business, and you out here and don't have a major yet.
And I'm not trying to shit on people who switch majors or get their degree and decide they want to go back and do something else. I'm just saying that this show makes it seem like that they're at the end of college and they're treating it like they're just going into college. Like, okay, what do I want to study in college? Versus like finding a job in something that you've been putting work into.
Or it's also treating it like they are just getting their associate's degree.
Yes.
Like if it was their associate's degree, then yeah, you don't necessarily have to declare a major yet. But if you are getting their bachelor's, which is what the show is making us think, yeah, you gotta know.
By the way, I guess this is Eric's 4th year in college. So yeah, 2 years ahead of them. So Cory, Topanga, they don't have to have a major yet. They're still in their associate's degree time. That's fine. But these kids should know.
Alan says something along the lines of, not everybody is capable of everything. And again, this is the argument that I have with Alan, where I'm like, I kind of get what he's saying, because I do think about it. I think about Alan holistically. I think about this guy who graduated, or did he even go to school, or did he go straight into the Navy?
I think he went straight to the Navy.
So this is a guy who never went to school, went into the military, came out, became a grocer, didn't like it. So he sees his son having stability as a good thing, and not having to go out there and kind of fail his way through life to find himself. Now, yeah. I do feel like, to Amy and Feeney's point, that does kind of limit Eric in a lot of ways, and it prevents him from being able to develop into his own person. But Alan has a really good point in it's also good to have some sense of stability. Like, I don't like that everyone's like, oh, Eric's got it all figured out because he's got a family
Mhm.
business to go. Like, no, that doesn't mean he has it all figured out. That means he has a paycheck, and that is good. You can, like, two things can be true. You can
Yeah.
have a paycheck and have a job and then also want to pursue something different. Ask me how I know.
This idea of like not everyone is capable of everything. I kind of wish, honestly, we got a little bit more of that as kids, because I felt like this notion that you can do anything is kind of overwhelming. It's
Yes.
walking into a store and just being like, "Oh, I can make anything with like and not have a recipe book to go into a grocery store." You're overwhelmed with options. I wish someone would have said, "You could do anything that you're good at if they're hiring." Like, really kind of just like, you have to kind of know thyself in order to find what you're going to be good at. And so I think Alan, if he would have kind of said, like, this is a job that works towards his strengths and kind of made an argument towards it, I think would have been interesting to see, like, to not make it seem like all of his decisions were based off of a lack of faith of Eric and being like, no, I actually think that this is better for him because of what his skill set is.
I completely agree with you. I like the one thing I will say is when they bring back the weatherman conversation. When they
Yes.
bring back the weatherman conversation and they actually sincerely talk about, hey, remember when you wanted to be a weatherman? And he goes, oh, can you believe like I do that? I couldn't do that. In that
Yeah.
moment is when Alan is like, oh, I'm limiting your ability to dream.
Your confidence. Yeah.
That is a different conversation
Hmm.
because the way that this episode structures it is having a job means you can't pursue higher education, and having a and working at your family business means that you can't grow at all. That is not true, but that's what this storyline says. However, once they paint the picture that will well Eric is limiting himself and no longer believes that he can achieve his actual dreams,
Hmm.
that's where I'm like, you're right. And also when he says, actually, I was thinking about being a veterinarian, you're like, oh, actually, that makes sense because you did see the light in his eyes when Rachel brought it up, and you
Yeah.
saw the way that he kind of responded to it.
And he
And
loves monkeys.
and he loves monkeys. So whether or not he wanted to be a veterinarian or if he wanted to be a weatherman, both of the reasons why he wants to do it is to help people. He wants to be there to make other people's lives brighter. And I
It
think that that is a true thing, and that is a character consistent thing, and that is what endears us to Eric.
I was gonna say it makes him really empathetic, because I feel like a lot of the times his more cartoony behavior has us really struggling to like empathize with that dude at all. But when he's like, yeah, I'm throwing out this thing about being a veterinarian last minute too, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, I kind of want to help people. It makes us as an audience go like, wow, there's more to Eric than he's been given in terms of material. And I just really like that they're circling back to the weatherman thing. You know what's interesting is that I thought, I was like, man, if there was a spinoff of Eric as a weatherman or Eric as a veterinarian, I would watch either of those shows. Like, I
Oh
feel
my
like
God.
he would do so well in those like a workplace comedy set in those like in that situation. I can see it. I can see it, and I want it.
Oh my God. Like again, like we are rife with spin-off ideas, but the idea of Eric being a pediatrician or a veterinarian and Jack owning the business,
Mm,
like these are things that I love. Like this would be
yeah.
so much fun. And it makes me like really upset that we never kind of got the attention of the spinoff that these characters deserve. And also the another thing that like made me kind of have to give Alan's limiting of expectations with Eric some credit is knowing what Eric becomes in the future, knowing the plays with squirrels of it all, knowing how he's set up in the future in Girl Meets World. Like, I'm not gonna go deep dive into it, but I'll just say that like the plays with squirrels and this man is kind of like a weird mountain man of it all is still in very much in his storyline. And to that point, knowing that, you're like, Eric did kind of need family. He
Mhm.
did kind of need an anchor because without that anchor, he just was left to the woods.
Yeah. Eventually Alan kind of comes to the conclusion that he's, not even says it out loud, but as Eric is kind of saying, oh, I feel just as confused as my friends. Alan kind of has a knowing smile, being like, yeah, that you should at this age. You should be confused because you should be exploring all these options and not limiting yourself. It kind of wraps up. Joshua comes in. Can I just say something? Joshua comes in. He is a little bitty baby.
Yeah, little baby.
He's a tiny
Little
baby.
baby.
I mean, given his birthday, he is no older than a year old. I'm
Mhm.
just saying that because Rachel says that they're 4 months away from graduation. So at most, at the end of the series, this kid should only be 14, 15 months old.
I don't
Just
know what you're talking
throw that
about.
out there.
I don't know what you're talking about. If you saying that we little Nicky this kid, then
I'm saying that if it does happen, they absolutely pulled a little Nicky.
Okay, really quickly, can we have a millennial conversation really quickly?
Sure.
Which is to have this conversation of what you were talking about previously, which is you can be anything, and the overwhelming kind of what it's like it's not bias remorse. It's like something about choice and freezing. I can't think of what it is. I promise you it'll come to me later. Anyone else? Oh, choice paralysis. I knew it would come.
Yeah.
So, the choice paralysis of it all, and the idea that as millennials we were taught you could do anything, but also as the internet came about, anything really expanded itself and jobs that were never thought of were created. Like, I think it's really funny that Eric would absolutely be a dancing weatherman in
Mhm.
this timeline. He would, like, if he had pursued being a weatherman, that is actually a very lucrative field because being a personality would have only helped him in the upcoming decades.
Or like Eric as like an early gen YouTube creator, like something like that, like being an online creator. I could even see him having fun with doing something like that. It's really interesting because this whole episode is about like not locking yourself down and not tying yourself down to one thing. But it's so funny because as a millennial, I have to say that so many of us were like, well, I got my degree in this thing, so I can't, like, I'm kind of stuck in this field. And if I have to start all over again, like changing your idea of what you want to do after you have a degree is such like kind of a stressful thing. Like, it's not like, I don't know. I'm not saying that you're limited, but it feels like you're kind of locked in once you got that degree in that thing.
Well, that's how they made us feel. But what
Mhm.
I will say, I was very fortunate enough to very shortly after I graduated, I moved to New York, and I'll say maybe 3 years after I graduated, and as you said, I was doing what I had gotten a degree in. I met people who they were like business owners, and I was like, "What is your degree in?" And it was like oceanography, like, like something completely
Sure.
different, like languages, like that's what their degrees were in, but they were owning this business, and that let me understand that it really didn't matter. As a matter of fact, as of recently, more and more jobs don't need you to have a college
Yeah.
degree, which means that first and foremost I should be able to write off my student loans. That's the most important thing. But second
Sure.
of all, the world is ever changing. And when we teach kids, again, specifically millennials, this was a conversation that was drilled in our heads. You go to college, you get a degree, you get a job in that field, and you stick with it. And that
Hmm.
has never worked out for us.
Never.
And I feel like we are doing a good job at teaching kids, hey, maybe that's how it used to work, but now the most important things that you can have are the soft skills, or the ability to adapt, or the fundamentals. Like,
Yeah.
if you have those things, you have no idea where technology will go. You should have some idea of your strengths and just constantly lean into that. And that is something that I will say I was constantly kind of told, but not really made to understand. And I feel like we're doing a better job at like just telling the future generation. I know that it feels like you have to have it all figured out when you graduate, whether it's high school or college, but trust me, the world, nobody knows what they're doing. The world is ever changing. Do the best you can, as Feeney said.
Yeah, and I'll say that like that's I feel like that's knowledge that our generation learned the hard way. Like you said, like we were told something very different, but now it's like the world is so uncertain. I think there's an AI that just came out that can develop that it's like a developer like it's doing web developing and computer developing, like they're teaching AI to do so much at this point that it's going
We
to
ain't
affect
learned nothing with
yeah,
Skynet.
we didn't learn damn thing, but there's so much that has been co-opted by AI that like there's a lot of careers that kind of like an accountant that you were just like, is this even going to be a thing that is this job going to exist in its current form? Is it going to be a job that I can support myself with even though I have this degree? Like there's so many things that are uncertain that now I just feel like the perspective of this has really shifted from the time when this episode came out.
Absolutely. Do you have anything else you want to say in terms of the Eric of it all?
No. We can move on.
I really did appreciate this storyline. I appreciated having Alan kind of like think about his son and where he was at and kind of see, I'll say at least the joy mixed with the anxiety of not knowing what was coming next from Jack and Rachel, and then realizing that he was robbing his son of that experience.
You know, one last thing I guess I'll say to this is, you know, I'm not a parent, but, you know, I talk to parents, you know, I have cousins who have kids and everything. I feel like everybody who has multiple kids maybe has one kid that they're like a little worried about. And like, and that's very reflective to real life, if nothing else.
I love that you said that because I looked at this specifically with the way that Amy was talking to Alan. And I was like, I feel like Amy is always the one who is critical of Cory and forgiving of Eric, and
Firstborn.
Alan's the other way around.
Mm,
Like, do you
you're
not
right,
think?
yeah.
Like, I feel like Alan is always very much he's critical of Eric. And maybe that's because it is his son. And he's like, I expected more of you. But then like with Cory, he's way more adaptable. I know that a lot of people are going to be like, no, when Cory wanted to come in. Yeah, but that was like him having to sever ties. And I think another thing with Alan is he doesn't know how to do the soft parenting. Once his child no longer lives up to what he had planned for them, all Alan knows is to cut them off.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely Alan is more of Cory's parent, and Amy is more of Eric's parent, and Morgan is missing, and Joshua will get lucky with the scraps.
I mean, you're right. I wonder. Well, here's the thing. I feel like even then, in the future, we see. I know in Girl Meets World, I have to put quarters in myself, but I think we see more of Joshua, which goes to show that if you are a Matthews boy, all the attention in the world. If you are a Matthews girl, good luck. I mean, again, once Topanga became a Matthews, it's like good luck with any development.
Okay. I know we're going through such a side tangent here, but I can't help but to think of just like the patriarchy and this idea of like, well, am I going to invest all this time into a girl who's basically going to leave our family for another man's family, take on his last name? Like,
you getting deep.
I'm just saying that like this idea of like favoring the boys over the girls because, you know, technically the boys are the ones who are going to carry on the name and the legacy and all that. that. I feel like I maybe secretly there's some of that going on, but I can't help but to ask the questions.
Well, I mean, if you want to go there, I will say that like that was what I was saying with Eric. It's this idea of like Eric didn't live up to his father's expectations, and the reason why Alan's like, oh, I don't have to worry about my other kids, is because he can see the path that they're supposed to be on, but Eric is constantly changing, and that is what makes him not have faith in his son. Not the fact that his son is very clearly talented and very clearly smart in his own unique way, but it's the fact that he doesn't subscribe to the system in the way that all of Alan's other kids do.
Sure.
Okay. As I was saying with the Matthews girl, let's talk about Topanga and her man.
I don't really feel like there's a whole lot to the storyline, if I'm being real.
You know what? I want to go on a few things. One is that we open up with the leather jacket game.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn and Topanga are both wearing leather jackets, and I was like, good for y'all. It's feeling so weird because Danielle specifically, I feel like every episode her wardrobe changes even more different, and I'm like, who is this person? Like, I just like don't know who Topanga is style-wise.
I feel like they're trying to differentiate Topanga Lawrence from Topanga Matthews. I feel like there's something going on there that they're trying to shift her character a little bit.
It's so funny that you said that because I was like, in this episode, she's so stereotypical wife. She's so like again, there's this idea of, oh, we're married now. I don't have to. There's this idea of ragging on him and his sex life
in front of his friends too, like fucking rude, like regardless, like I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see why he would have a beef with that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm with you, but it's like I just was watching, I was like, Topanga's very much like she feels very much like the wife in Everybody Loves Raymond,
or King of Queens, something like that. Yeah,
exactly. It's just like, oh, he's doing his things again.
Sure.
Anybody want to go see a movie? But honestly, you're right. There's a difference between Topanga Lawrence and Topanga Matthews, and I didn't think about that.
When Cory starts his whole they're doing this quiz in Couples magazine, which I don't even know if this is a real magazine, but the show brings it up all the time. It's basically like a health quiz of how long they're going to live. Topanga's like, oh, I'm going to live to be this long. And they're like, Cory, you should have been dead already. And of course, Cory makes it his entire personality. Everyone is over it. And even Topanga's like, I'm going to go to this movie too. I don't got time for this. And that, honestly, I was like, I'm with you.
That said, I do blame Topanga a little bit because you knew what you was doing. Why did you do this? You know who you're talking to. The moment you told the results, everybody was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
So what did you, like, that's when you should have been like, Cory, your answers are missing. I don't know.
Yeah. Cory, you're going to live to be an old age. Don't worry about it. Something.
Lie. Like, you brought this on yourself and on everybody else because everyone picks up immediately how this will go. But that said, I want to take a moment. And I know that we hear so many people are like, it's not that serious. But specifically, to me, this episode does not take Cory's mental health serious. And I say that because it turns out hypochondria now is an illness anxiety disorder, sometimes called hypochondria or health anxiety. It is excessively worrying that you are or may become seriously ill. You may have no physical symptoms, or you may believe that normal body sensations or minor symptoms are signs of severe illness, even though a thorough medical exam, which we will come to, doesn't reveal any serious medical conditions. Illness anxiety disorder is a long-term condition that can fluctuate in severity. It may increase with age or during times of stress, but psychological counseling and sometimes medication can help ease your worries. I say all of that to say that as much as we like to rag on Cory, this is legit. And I think that, as you said earlier, we didn't have the words for it in terms of being like, hey, this is anxiety. This is an anxiety disorder. But you and I both know how important anxiety disorders are and how real they are. So the fact that it's just kind of played as a joke to me, it is one of those things where we aren't taking mental health seriously.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that I just wanted to call out.
You know what? I'll agree to that because up until he actually gets like an official diagnosis, I'm kind of rolling my eyes at Cory too. But like, no, he did get an official diagnosis, and yeah, did give him placebos, but they wouldn't have gave it to him if they, you know what I mean, if he didn't need
Yeah.
it. So it just like, and understanding everything that we know about anxiety now, it's so clear that Cory's been had anxiety like
Yep.
about so much, and it's interesting because in this moment, like Topanga even says, like before he comes in with the results, like all he wants to know is that I'm gonna take care of him as we grow old together. And if Shawn's like, well, if you know that's what he wants, why not just give it to him? She's like, well, I don't want to give him attention for bad stuff. I just want to reward good behavior. And I was just like, I mean, that's a way to have a relationship, I guess.
Here's the thing, no, to that point. So that was so important to me because first and foremost, it's this idea when she said all he wants is attention. And uh Shawn goes, then why don't you give it to him? I was like, oh, honestly, like it does feel like it's that simple. But then when she says, well, no, I don't want to reward this behavior, that to me is like, no, as a partner, I get that. When your partner is doing something and you're like, no, I don't want to give this attention because if I do, you'll do it again. But what is interesting is this idea of, or you could be a supportive partner, or you can take it seriously and be like, even though it's not real to me, it's real to you. And that was something that I myself learned from this episode because I was totally on Topanga's side when she was like, I don't want to reward it.
And to me, I was kind of on Shawn's side of just being like, dude, you married this dude, you knew
Yeah.
who he was like, and if this is all it's gonna take for him to just feel better, like clearly he's stressing out about this, even if it seems silly to you. And you know, I just jumping around the episode a little bit, forgive me, this idea that Cory's like, well, I just want you to hold my hand until I fall asleep, and you know, when you're sick, I'll take care of you. What he wanted to know was just like basic reassurance in the relationship, which I feel like is such a fair thing to ask for. And although he asked for it in a kind of cartoony way, in an extreme way, he just wanted reassurance. And honestly, people need reassurance in relationships all the time. It goes both ways. So I just feel like this was just a moment that was played up for laughs that actually had a very simple solution if someone just treated Cory seriously.
Well, as someone's treated Cory seriously, and I say that because one, I think that immediately I was like, oh, Cory's going into his old curmudgeon self. We're getting like the anxious, riddled caricature that we usually get with him. And so, because of that, I myself initially rolled my eyes. But the more that the episode played out, I was like, oh, he does have anxiety.
Yeah.
And that is a real condition. And even before he got the diagnosis, I was like, Cory's being a hypochondriac, which again is a real thing. And and I also like that the episode, to what you have been saying, points out, Topanga, you know who you married. This is
Mhm.
how he is. This is what he does. So you should at least give it the attention that it deserves. You don't have to go above and beyond, but still give him the attention that he deserves because Angela and Shawn are like, you know who this is? We all know what this is. We all know this routine. So this is kind of on you a little bit.
Yeah, you know, the Cory Topanga storyline I thought was okay. Like again, like it seemed very simple. I don't know that in a better episode that this would have stood out to me.
Honestly, I don't think it would have. I will not lie that this episode, at least this part of the episode, was the weakest and could have been removed.
Yeah.
Or as I said, would have benefited from having some more comedic beats with Cory interacting with the rest of his family. Like I think it would have been fun had we seen different people interact with Cory and his diagnosis. It would have been funny if we would have seen Feeney have to acknowledge hypochondriac Cory. It would have been fun if Shawn went with him to the doctor's office, and
Yep.
have more of that codependency. Speaking of which, the Cory storyline includes our roll call, which is Ted, Karis as Dr. Feldspar, who has a moment where, again, Boy Meets World does that thing where it toes the line, where he goes, "Are you gay?" And Cory
Mhm.
goes, "Are you?" And Dr. Feldspar goes, "I am." And it's,
Yep.
again, it's it's a joke that's not a joke. And I was like, you towed that line and you love doing it, and I can't really be mad at you, but I'm watching you. And then we
Well, he
also
did.
get,
Well, he also did randomly just say like, "Good looking boy, that David Arquette." Like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
sure,
again.
throw it
And I
out
was like,
there.
why? Why are we doing this? Whatever. I literally looked and I was like, is there some like connection with David Arquette that we're supposed to know? Or maybe that was just kind of like the clue that he was gay. I don't know. It was very weird to me. And then Ralph Manza, who is TV legend, he plays Uncle Maury, who thinks he's Sammy Sosa. And the one thing that I have, even though I love Ralph Manza, he's been on so many shows. I think I remember him most from The Nanny, but um, he is a television legend. But I also felt like this was a little Jewish coding, and I was like, this show has this habit of giving Ben all of these Jewish jokes and these Jewish tropes, which is fine if we acknowledge that if we acknowledge that Cory is Jewish, but Cory isn't Jewish. So what are we doing?
I
It
would have
feels
much
very
preferred
confusing.
this show just make the family Jewish. Like, let's just
Make
have
him
it be about a Jewish
Jewish.
family. Like, that's great. Like, we can look into the world of a Jewish family. We can explore that a little bit more. Like, I just like that versus like, Eric just being like, can't work on Saturdays because of my Jewish peeps. Like, it's funny, I guess, but like, you guys are leaning into a lot of it in a way that's just like, all right, well, just do it.
Yeah, like here's the thing: have one Jewish character, and then this makes sense, and we
Mm.
can bring up the jokes and have that character do it.
Or
But when you
make them half Jewish, make Amy Jewish. Like, just you know what I mean? Like, you could have fun
make
with it.
Alan Jewish, and he doesn't know his whole half of the family, so it's
Sure.
fine. But like, it is the fact that they are quote unquote a all American, what is it called, Protestant or Christian
Mm.
household, but they have this Jewish kid. Again, speaking about The Nanny, the thing about The Nanny that was fun is you could do the Jewish jokes because the character's Jewish.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it feels weird, and I think it again is from a different time where you couldn't be considered all American and be considered Jewish. So it's this blending when I feel like the more that we've progressed, it's like, yeah, just make the family Jewish or
And
half Jewish or whatever.
And it's so funny because I feel like Michael Jacobs wanted to make a Happy Days, but he could have made like a Jewish Happy Days. Like he could have made like a Jewish All-American Family in a way that I feel like could have really been accepted. Um,
I thought a happy days.
yeah. And like even with the Happy Days, Fonzie, Jewish.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So it's just like, to that point, it's just, to me, it's weird. It's just weird. And like, it's one of those things that don't age well, mostly if you look too closely at the world. For a comedy beat, it works. The Sammy Sosa of it all, the didn't he tell you I'm nuts? Like,
yeah.
I loved it. I had a good time, but I'm just wondering to myself, why?
Well, I asked the same thing about the entire Cory storyline. Is his anxiety ever going to come back? Is this hypochondria ever going to come back? Or was just a bit for one episode? Like, there's so many times where we give these characters like real problems that are just for one episode and we never return to it. Does Jack really have a gambling problem, or was that just for one episode? Like, what longevity do any of these issues actually have? I don't know that Cory's hypochondriac whole storyline amounts to anything.
It does, just but like similar to how Eric's Weatherman thing caught up, they were saving it for season 13. Like, you just gotta wait a few seasons.
Of
They'll come
course, yeah.
back and bring it up. All right. Well, anyway, anything else you want to say about this episode?
Nah.
Okay, now bro moment. What do you have?
Bro moment is I don't know. I guess this kind of dismissal to just kind of label people as nuts or whatever, things like that. Like I feel like you know, it's interesting. They named the song after the Cats in the Cradle, but I actually feel like a better name for the song would have been The Offspring's The Kids Aren't All Right, because like both
Ooh.
Cory and Eric, these Matthew boys, we have Eric who everyone thinks that something's wrong with him, and we have Cory who thinks something's wrong with him, but like it's really like the kids are going to be fine, like they're going to be okay. So I guess this just the dismissal of both of these people who really have things that they should work through. But honestly, this episode didn't really give me a lot of bro moments. I mean, even the gay doctor thing, I was like, oh, that's fine.
Okay. Script doctor, the kids aren't all right. I'm with you. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. And my bro moment, here's the thing. We've kind of talked on it a little bit. I'm gonna say Boy Meets World's like riding of the fence of it all. Like it's just like you do feel like you're kind of towing that line, and not in a way that feels like it's above board. It feels like you're trying to get away with something. So specifically with the gay joke, but also like I said with the Jewish jokes, I'm just like, I'm watching you.
Yeah.
Finny lesson.
Feeding lesson. Everything's gonna be fine.
Is it though?
Everything's gonna be fine.
Again, as a millennial, is it though? I need answers.
I mean, in terms of like us in the world, absolutely not. For these characters, sure, they're gonna be fine.
Okay, my Feeny lesson is allow people to be themselves. I think
Sure.
in both storylines, it's this allowing people to be themselves and supporting their growth is pretty much what I'm taking away from this.
Sure.
Okay, grades. What grade are you giving this?
Honestly, I'm gonna give this one like a C. C.
Twinsies. I thought it was
Yeah.
a C. I really do think it suffers because of the Cory storyline. I just not only did it not do much for me, but it just didn't feel as fun as I think it should have, considering that the Eric storyline was so serious. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a C as well. So
Yeah, honestly, I just think it's kind of a boring episode.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It's lacking that spark.
It's lacking something like memorable. Like I don't know that there's like when we're reviewing all the episodes from the series, if this is one that's gonna pop up.
You're right. I think we even get a Fina, and that doesn't even. I don't even think that makes the cut for all of our Feeny calls. Okay. Homework. What? Homework.
You know what? I'm gonna do something a little bit different today. I'm gonna call out Monfungos.
What'd you call me?
Mofungos is a Puerto Rican restaurant in North Hollywood.
Ooh, come on.
I don't usually do like food or anything like that, but I gotta be honest, like I'm living in LA now. I don't got my grandma around, I don't got my aunties around. Like sometimes I just want some I want some Latin food, and it's hard to come by. And honestly, Mofungos has been coming through for me like crazy. So I just want to give them a shout out. If you guys are wanting some Spanish food, if you're living in Hollywood, check them out there in North Hollywood. And it's a great little spot. They have fantastic food, reasonable prices, and they got the stuff that like I don't know, my grandma would make for us on like Christmas and things like that. So just lots of good memories and nostalgia there.
You're right. I need that kind of Latin food. I miss it. And like
from Florida, you could go anywhere and get that shit. But
anyway, I was just gonna say, as a Floridian, you just eat that shit for lunch. But yeah, no, it's been a while. And like Mofungos, all right, come on, sponsor us.
Yeah, give us some gift cards or something. We'll send them out. We can set you up real nice.
We need a craft services, but yeah, I love that. My homework is gonna be something that was very fun, but also poorly written, which is Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal.
I have not seen it yet.
I gotta tell you, so my husband and I last night we were like, looking for something to put on, and I saw it, and a lot of people have been talking about it. And I saw the original, and we got to talk about the original at some point in time. But
Obsessed with the original.
exactly, for so many reasons. But I was like, all right, well, let's watch the remake Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal, Jessica Williams, and Conor McGregor. Okay, so if that sounds like a grab bag of casting, it is. It is chaotic in so many ways. I was like, it is nonsensical.
Mhm.
The acting is all over the place. Everyone's making different choices.
As was the original.
No, but that's what I was gonna say. I was like, but it kind of fits with the original in that sense of you ask yourself, what are we doing? But after a while, you're like, do I care?
Do
Am
I
I
care?
having fun? I was like, we're having fun with movies again. Like, I think I had said this on a previous homework with Beekeeper, where I was like, it's you don't even care. You're like,
Yeah.
none of this makes sense, but do I care? Not at all. And I was like, do I care? Not at all. Hot guys go punch punch, things go boom. That's
That's all you need.
all you were promising me. And that's all you told me Jake Gyllenhaal would be tight and bodied and punch someone. And guess what he did? All of the above.
All of the above.
And,
You know, to that point, I just want to say I've been rewatching all the Fast and Furious movies. I can't tell you how much fun I'm having watching like nonsense movies. So
yes.
if this fits into that category, then hell yeah.
Yeah, like that's God, what was it? I was thinking about something. There was some movie that was out recently, and people were talking about. Oh, I remember on my other job, they were talking about Immaculate, and they were like, it's not the greatest movie ever, but also not every movie needs to be Academy Award nominated. Not every movie needs to be a think piece. Sometimes a movie is just, we had a budget and we had some people who were willing to do some shit. And it was fun and it was nonsense. And like, I miss, like I told my husband, this is what we used to call like a red box movie.
Yes.
You know, like I will say that we also, because of streaming, we have lost kind of like where we place certain movies. And because this movie went to streaming, I think it got discounted. And I think that word of mouth would help it. But hey, this is absolutely a movie that you would watch with your friends on a Thursday night at a movie theater and just be like, that was stupid and fun, but
stupid and fun.
I had a good time.
Can I ask you one question? Forgive me, this is a spoiler, but I have to know. And I think you know what I'm gonna ask.
I'm waiting.
Is there a throat rip in this movie?
There isn't, and I'm so sorry. I'm so close to it. I was like, are we gonna do it? Are we gonna do it?
What is the point in a Roadhouse remake without a throat rip? God damn.
I will tell you, for all of you who were wondering, yes, you do see Conor McGregor's ass repeatedly. And I gotta say, whatever you think about that man, them cheeks, round.
Well, you know what? That's fair because there's a lot of Swayze ass in the original. So
exactly, like they were like, someone's got to show cheek. And Gyllenhaal said,
part of the legacy.
But yeah, no, it was fun, stupid. I can't. Oh my god, I'm gonna see if I can find. I won't be able to find his name. But do you remember the Hispanic character in Broad City, like their friend?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all right. He's in the movie. Apologies to this actor. I don't have time to look up your name, but he's in the movie and he knows his role and he plays it so
Arturo
well.
Castro. He plays Jaime in Broad City.
Yeah, Jaime in Broad City. He plays Mo in this movie. He knows his role. He plays it so well. And like me and my husband just kept being like, this is fun. It's so fun. And by the way, when I say like nonsense, it brings back cheesy one-liners in like the best 80s 90s way. Like I want you to see it just from the stupid little one-liners that we get.
I'm into it.
Yeah, so anyway, you guys check out Roadhouse or get you some Latin food, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but before we do, I was giving it to you, but you
already
overheard it.
No. Guys, Thank you so much for checking in. You can, of course, check us out on all the social media spots at Bra Meets World. Email us. Check out our YouTube. Like, we got videos of all of these episodes up there. You guys are really good at leaving us comments. Keep up with the interactions. If you guys have thoughts on this episode, let us know. We have our Pod Meets World Reacts episodes up on our Patreon, so be sure to check those out. We got the merch, so buy the merch. And anything else I forgot?
No, I think you hit it all. We just want to thank you guys and want to remind you to dream.
Try.
Which, again, the themes of this episode are don't be afraid to dream, don't be afraid to try, and do some good.
Do some damn good.
Later, bruds.
Later, bruds. This episode of Bra Meets World was produced by Ceej and edited by Tony Curtis. Bra Meets World is a 2 Free Tokens media production.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This boy meets world.